Today we're going to be exploring the question of how we might construct an inner Mishkan, an inner tabernacle through our mindfulness practice. So Adi, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the text, that would be so wonderful. And I saw also some people write into the chat that they're praying for healing for loved ones, friends, family, and so I just want to dedicate the teaching today to that healing. Adi, I think we've got the wrong document here.
So sorry, just one moment.
No problem. So even as Adi is bringing up that document, if we go back to Parashat Truma, the portion Truma, which begins this whole tabernacle cycle, God tells Moses to instruct the people to construct a mikdash, a temple, a shrine. Right? And then the divine says, V'shachanti betocham, I will dwell in them, not in it. That is to say, in the people themselves and not in the structure. So the Hasidic text we're going to be looking at in just a moment was written by Rabbi Moshe Chaim Ephraim of Sudilkov, who actually was the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism. And he learned the Baal Shem Tov's teachings on his grandfather's knee, quite literally, having lived in the Baal Shem Tov's house until the age of 12. And his book, Degel Machane Ephraim, which we're going to be looking at here, at least some snippets, serves as one of the most reliable sources for the Baal Shem Tov's teachings, all of which were transmitted orally. But Rabbi Moshe Chaim Ephraim had some of his own ideas also, and here he teaches that the Torah is eternal. Right? This is a foundational principle of Judaism, that the Torah is an eternal font of life wisdom. So he goes on to say, we can thus construct a Mishkan for the Holy and Blessed One in our hearts in every moment. Right? If the Mishkan narratives were only a one-time event meant to help the people construct a tabernacle in the desert, and then never relevant again, then the Torah would not be eternal. And so how can we make the Torah relevant to us here and now? He says we can actually construct a Mishkan for the divine in our hearts in every moment of our lives. And the instructions in the Torah for how to do so provide us with the roadmap for how to construct that inner Mishkan. As is written, they shall make me a sanctuary and I will dwell in them. The text doesn't say in it, but in them. And the Torah also states from Psalm 78, God pitched a tent within the human being. Ohel shikein ba'adam. And may God assist us that we may merit an indwelling of the divine presence in our being speedily in our days. Amen. Of course, the Mishkan is also called Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting, because that was the place where we encountered the divine most powerfully in a most concentrated way. That is to say, the place where the divine presence was manifest here on earth. And Rabbi Moshe Chaim Ephraim, of course, ends with a prayer because he feels that that full manifestation hasn't yet been effectuated and that we, through our practice, can help to bring about the indwelling of divine presence in the world and herald the Messianic era. So if we turn now to the text below, he offers us another passage, this one from Kitisa. This one's about the Sabbath. But we might say that it provides us with the technology for how to construct an inner Mishkan. So he's commenting here on the verse from Exodus 31. The children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath for their generations. The Hebrew is V'shamiru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asot et HaShabbat ledorotam, as an eternal covenant, Brit Olam. It is an eternal sign between me and the children of Israel. Beini uvein b'nei Israel ot hi le'olam. Okay. He goes on to comment, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Ephraim, that is, this is what the Torah was pointing to with the words, Et HaShabbat ledorotam, the Sabbath for their generations. He says, if you take the first letter of each of those words, Et, an aleph, HaShabbat, a hey, L'dorotam alamed, right? They spell together the word tent, ohel. That is, the Sabbath functions like a tent or a mishkan. Right? In other words, he's suggesting that while the Mishkan was a kind of sanctuary for the divine in time, in place rather, Shabbat serves the same function, but in another dimension, which is to say in time. In time. And Rabbi Heschel, in his book The Sabbath, often calls Shabbat a sanctuary in time. This is why the Torah stated for their generations, L'dorotam. And here's a little bit of Hasidic wordplay, which has the connotation of dwelling, dira, dira. Right? Why construct this kind of a tent in the Sabbath? Because that will allow the divine to dwell in us. For the Sabbath is of a piece rather with the divine indwelling in the temple. Through the Sabbath, the divine presence dwells in us. In other words, by letting go of all of our daily preoccupations, right? The to-do list, all of the things we wanted to achieve, and as the rabbis teach, relating to our experience as if all of our work is already done, ki'ilu kol melachtecha asuya, at least one day a week, right? During that time, we might actually settle more deeply into the body, into the heart, into the mind in a way that will allow the divine presence to become more manifest in us. And we, therefore, will become, through the practice of Shabbat, can become an actual mishkan, an actual physical structure for the indwelling of spirit. And this is why the verse concludes, it is an eternal sign, ot hi le'olam, yet another acronym for tent, right? Aleph from ot, he from he, and lamed from le'olam, yet another acronym for tent. Namely, the Sabbath is an eternal sign without end. Even when there's no temple standing, the Sabbath is never void. It is a temple. It is a tent, right? Understand this experientially. Understand this experientially. Don't take my word for it. He says, check it out in your own experience, right? So this is one of the beautiful things about our mindfulness practice in my experience is that it provides us with the capacity to carve out a mini Sabbath any day of the week, right? Not just Friday night to Saturday, but if we can really come into a deeper quality of presence and let go of all of our habits around doing, we can actually begin to experience a deeper influx of spirit or consciousness that can then permeate all of our being and restore us to a sense of inner peace, calm, and provide us with the energy to meet whatever is here upon us. Just want to say that, in this, in the kind of alignment with this notion of the Mishkan as a tent of meeting, we might also say these mini Sabbaths allow us to encounter truly the divine within all aspects of our being. Right? And I remember many years ago when I was just getting into practice, I was suffering from really, really difficult head pain. I had real genuine blockages of infected bone in my openings to my sinuses, and I was just in so much pain. Felt like someone was hitting me between the eyes with a sledgehammer every couple of seconds. And I remember I was just getting into meditation, and I would sit for 45 minutes cross-legged and watch my breath and bring my mind back again and again. And I didn't really know what it was doing, but I felt relaxed. But what I realized afterwards is that I was developing the capacity to encounter all of my experience and to welcome it into the tent of my conscious awareness, into my inner Shabbat mind. And I realized that because one morning I was sitting there and meditating, and the pain was just so overbearing, and I noticed all of this resistance, try and get rid of it and push it away and ignore it, pretend it wasn't there. And then I said to the pain, I actually turned toward it and I started talking to it, and I said, I have every reason to believe you're going to be here with me for a long time. So given that that's the case, why don't you be here as my teacher? And in that moment, something profound happened, which is that the pain was still there. It didn't change. But suddenly it was floating in the infinite spaciousness of pure consciousness. And in that space, I was able to discern that it was actually impermanent, that it was kind of gripping me and letting me go, and gripping me and letting me go, and that it was fluid, right? And diaphanous, almost like the, the cloth kind of walls of a tent. And that was a moment of profound encounter, right? When I actually encountered for the first time in my life, this was when I was in my late 20s. For the first time in my life, I was willing to really encounter pain, right? And to encounter the divine aspect of my own mind through that pain as a result. So, whatever you may be holding now, we're going to sit. And I just want to invite you to set up your inner ohel, your inner Shabbat tent, your inner Mishkan, by first attending to the joinery. Notice your posture and kind of make any adjustments that you need so the tent can be relatively stable. And yet this is not a skyscraper, this is a tent, right? And so the body is very supple, even though it's dignified and erect and stable. It's very supple, very soft. You can allow the skin to become more diaphanous, more relaxed. Doing the same for the muscles. And then once we feel that our tent is securely established and rooted and soft, and then we simply rest in the shade of awareness. It can be helpful to choose an anchor. That could be the rising and falling of your breath, or it could be sounds as they come and go. The feeling of contact between your body and its support. The key here is that we're infusing our physicality with consciousness, with spirit, and thereby allowing for a deeper indwelling, a more palpable indwelling of spirit. As consciousness, as awareness. And whatever arises, whether it's a distracting thought, a pleasant or unpleasant emotion, some other sensation in the body other than your anchor, see if you can invite it lovingly to rest under the shade of this inner Shabbat, Ohel, or Mishkan, to be embraced by the loving, transcendent, and spaciousness of awareness. To really encounter whatever is here now and not push it away or ignore it, pretend it's not there. As Sylvia Boorstein taught, we leave the front door open and we leave the back door open. This is an open tent. We allow things to arise, be known, and pass away. One of the most beautiful things about carving out this inner Mishkan is that it's really portable. As John Kabat-Zinn teaches, wherever you are, there you go. Or rather, wherever you go, there you are. Wherever you go, there you are. Yes, wherever we go, we may bring our neuroses, our unskillful habits, our pain, our grief, our difficulty, but wherever we go, we're also bringing this awareness, this transcendent quality of mind with us. And it can provide safe haven and truly allow for an encounter with whatever may be arising so that it might be known and beheld within the loving embrace of the divine presence. So perhaps you'll join me in song during the last moments of this practice. O Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, and in thanksgiving I'll be a living sanctuary for you.
Thank you so much, Sam. Friends, we expand that Mishkan to embrace all those who are in mourning or observing a yard site. And as always, we invite you, if you'd like to share a name or names in the chat box now or after we recite Kaddish. And thanks, Adi, for bringing up the words of the Kaddish on the screen and inviting those who wish to join me in rising in body or in spirit and sharing the words of Kaddish. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah,
Amen.
Ma Divra Chirutei, V'yamlich Mo, Chayechon, Yomechon, Uchaye B'chol Beit Yisrael, Ha'agala, B'zman Kari V'imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevarach, Olam V'ameh, Yitbarach Yishtabach Ba'ar V'yit'ala V'yit'aseh, Yitarar V'yitaleh V'yitalash V'yitzlach Ha'ela min kol birchata v'shirata kush b'chata v'nechemata da'amiran v'yamin Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'yalko Yisrael v'yimru amen Aseh shalom b'yomad v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'yalko Yisrael v'yalko Yisvei teva v'yimru
Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, friends, for joining us today. As always, thank you, Rabbi Sam Feinsmith, that gorgeous teaching, which we'll explore and hopefully extend into the rest of our Friday and into Shabbat and beyond. In a few minutes, those who would like are invited to stay on for some conversation, questions and answers about the practice and the teaching today. Thanks, Adi Stein, for holding our tech Mishkan beautifully, as always, today. I am going to put in the chat box, those of you who joined us yesterday, Sheila Piltz-Weinberg shared with me the words of her poem in progress on Torah and Corona. And I'm going to, put a link to that in 1 second, so you have that. And here we go. For those who might be signing off here it is. So it's a work in progress, and I think not to be shared around widely. But Sheila was generous enough to share the poem that she's working on. Okay, Julie, waiting for your question. Anyway, as we're getting to that, I want to wish those of you who are leaving us a Shabbat Shalom. Great to be with you. We hope to join us next week for a full week of practice. We have 2 new teachers joining us next week. Rabbi Brian Yosef Schachter will be joining us, and Rabbi Danya Rutenberg will be leading us a week from today, I believe. So we're excited to welcome 2 new teachers into our amazing array of Jewish mindfulness meditation teachers. Okay, so I see there's a question from Laura Zinker, which is my question too, about meditating with pain, which I appreciated that you shared, Sam, and I'll share also that I now have a chronic pain situation myself, which is new for me, and I know that I have not been happy about that. So it's worth diving a little bit deeper into this. So I know here's one question about, can you break down a little bit more specifically what that process is for you, or was for you, or is for you when discomfort comes up, whether it's physical, let's say also emotional, perhaps, other pain, other dimensions of pain. How do we work skillfully with that? And then the other thing, I just want to bookmark it so we get to it, is, you're speaking about awareness, consciousness, as another word, I guess, for the metaphor of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, with the internal tabernacle. I want to make sure we get to that. I'm bookmarking it from my mind. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mark. So the first thing I want to say about pain is we have to be very grateful for pain, because without it, mindfulness wouldn't be a thing in America.
Fantastic.
Because the reason that John Kabat-Zinn started studying mindfulness in a clinical setting was because there were all these people who had chronic pain, and the medical providers were saying, sorry, we can't do anything for you. And Kabat-Zinn, who was an MD who had also practiced meditation, said, well, let's try this instead. And as a result, we have now close to 40 years of rigorous scientific research on the benefits of mindfulness that have put the mindfulness movement in America on the map in a big way. But that doesn't address the question of how do we work with pain directly. So, the first thing that I just want to kind of explain is that my capacity to befriend my pain and allow myself to feel it and investigate it and welcome it in as my teacher was an enormous paradigm shift, right? Because everywhere in our culture, we're taught to avoid pain. And, we feel a headache, we immediately reach for the aspirin. Or the Tylenol, or we have a bellyache and we immediately reach for the Maalox, instead of asking ourselves, is it possible that there's something here that's causing this? Right? Something in the mind, something in the heart, right? Something in my lifestyle or in the way that I'm living. Doing this practice runs against the grain of our conditioning. And that was true even before the advent of modern medicine, because one of the insights of our practice that we see firsthand, moment by moment, is that when unpleasant arises, we naturally experience aversion. We want to do everything we can to get rid of whatever feels unpleasant or whatever is perceived to be unpleasant in the body-mind. So this is just part of our makeup, and we don't need to beat ourselves up for it. But we can investigate whether it's helpful, right? Because I'm willing to hazard that not a single one of us here on this Zoom meeting, nor anybody else living on this planet, has ever been able to indefinitely avoid pain. Right? And so I feel and I believe, and it's been my experience, that we do better to learn how to work with it uh, as a supplement to, right, whatever science offers us to reduce and eliminate it. I'm not saying we shouldn't reduce and eliminate pain, right? But there will come a time in our lives when that's not possible. So the first thing I want to say is begin with small, unpleasant things, right? Rather than trying to lift the heaviest weights in the gym, right? We all know that when you go to the gym and you haven't worked out for years, you start with small weights, a pound, 2 pounds, 3 pounds, 5 pounds. So a very easy way to do that is to observe an itch or some tension in your leg or in your back when you're meditating. And instead of trying to get rid of it, see what happens if you make space for it, if you welcome it with warmth, if you invite it to be your teacher, right, to support you in training and cultivating patience and insight and compassion. That's number one. I remember the first time I watched an itch in my life was on my first silent meditation retreat. And it's amazing to watch the stories that the mind tells, right? I'm going to die. I got to get out of here. Or maybe I'll steal someone's car and drive home. All of them, patently unhelpful and patently untrue, but then lo and behold, you can just watch an itch. And it's really unpleasant. And it gets more and more and more unpleasant as time goes on. But then eventually it changes and begins to subside, right? And passes away of its own accord. If we don't interfere, if we don't try to actively resist and push against the grain, if we just allow what's there to be as it is, and this is what I mean by creating an inner Mishkan, right? The consciousness is already there in us. It's just a question of how we deploy it.
Can you pause for a second, Sam, about when you're using consciousness or awareness? First of all, just to connect it with the text teaching, you're describing the inner tabernacle as awareness itself. Yes?
Not only, no, because the tabernacle had a physical structure to it, right?
Right.
It was a physical entity with beams and joints and curtains and fine cloths and skins and accoutrement, altars and lamp and so on and so forth, and then of course in the most inner sanctum, the Holy of Holies, right? The Ark with the tablets and so on and so forth, as well as a couple of other items, right? But as the tent of meeting, it was the place where heaven came down to earth, as it were, right? Where that which was formless, boundless, we might say pure light, right? Spirit, divinity.
This sounds familiar.
Manifested on a physical structure. That's what the meeting is all about. It's about the fusing, right, of what may seem at first, right, like opposites. But actually, if we begin to ask ourselves, what am I made of? Me, human being, right? What am I made of? Well, we all know there's a body, right? And we all know that there's a skeletal structure within that body and muscles and, sensations and feelings in the body. Right? And we all know there's a mind. We all notice ourselves thinking, can observe ourselves thinking, be upset about what we're thinking about, be gratified by what we're thinking about, right? And we have emotions that are part and parcel of having a mind, that's connected to a body. Because emotions are really just that. That's what they are. They're physical sensations coupled with thought patterns and perceptions. But then we can also notice, oh, I'm a body mind, but there's also this awareness, right? And if we actually turn our awareness, as it were, inward to investigate its own nature, Or another way to think about that is that we can allow awareness to relax into itself, to know itself. The way that, for example, some of the Chinese masters talk about this, they talk about turning the light around. Right? Usually the light of awareness is outwardly directed. But if we can, as it were, turn the light around, as if your inner eye could turn around to look at itself,
Mm-hmm.
which is not a problem. It's easily done because awareness knows. That's its primary quality. It's knowing, right? So it can easily know itself.
Can you
Not
again
not the
just on a
objects, not the objects that arise in it, not the physical sensations and the thoughts and the emotions, right? But consciousness itself or awareness itself can know itself. Right? Then it can come to know, at least this is my experience, right? And you'll have to check it out for yourself, that it is formless, that it is ever untarnished by the objects that arise and are known within it, that it is immutably spacious, that it is luminous in the sense that it knows with clarity, right, what's happening right here and now, and that it is embracing and compassionate and warm.
mm-hmm.
Right?
Can you again, Sam, just ask you to pause in terms of if there's a distinction between mind and awareness there. Like, for example, I'm thinking, and then I become aware that I am thinking, and my mind is generating thoughts, right?
Good. Yeah.
And then, so it seems like there is a distinction to be made between mind, thought, and awareness.
Yes.
And even beyond awareness of, oh, I am thinking right now. My mind is generating thoughts. And this, what you're suggesting, is taking it a step further. And just to underscore your point connected to the text, that this is, quote, the spiritual dimension, as opposed to the embodied dimension of the Mishkan. This is the spiritual, transcendent Shabbat awareness that that infuses the embodied aspect of the Mishkan, that's our inner Mishkan.
Yeah,
So
that
maybe then pick
infuses and
up from there.
therefore isn't separate from, right? So
Yes.
what I'll say is like this. Our tradition, the Hasidic tradition in particular, talks about two types of mind. Right? The first is called mochin de katnut, which means immature mind or small mind or contracted mind. Right? Katan in our tradition carries all of those connotations: small, immature, contracted. And then there's mochin de gadlut, right? Which means expansive, mature, spacious, right? Mind. And it's not that we need to achieve the latter, right? It's already in us as awareness itself. So, mochin de katnut, right, small or immature mind, includes pretty much, the everyday mind. It's constantly spinning, thinking, planning, remembering. It's the ego mind, right? It's the mind that says, I am, I am, I am, I'm doing, I am this, I am that, right? But mochin de gadlut, this kind of spacious quality of mind, which is to say just pure consciousness, which of course can know and observe and bear witness to and contain the everyday mind, right? The ego mind. It has no egoic qualities. Right? There's no self that you could possibly identify there. It's empty. It's completely empty of all qualities. It's just pure consciousness, right? And it doesn't occupy any space. It doesn't share the limitations of time, distinct beginning, middle, and end. It isn't subject to the exigencies of space-time. And so it's not something we need to achieve. We just need to recognize it. That's all. That's the work. We need to recognize that spirit, right, which is to say that which is not form-bound, that which is not delimited in any way by space-time, has always been right here in us, every single moment of our lives, right? And it's in direct contact with and infuses every other aspect of our being which is bound up in space-time, which is to say the body, our emotional life, right, and the thinking mind, all of which comprise our sense of small self. Okay? So what it means to abide in the Mishkan is just to allow that spiritual faculty to rest more deeply and to penetrate more deeply into the other facets of our being. That's all. Right? Then heaven is here on earth. There's no more work to do. Right?
Yeah, so there are questions here. We're actually a little bit over time, so hate to leave this, but it's because it's so rich. But just to, if we can, quickly put a point on it. Couple of questions which also occurred to me is that when you're speaking about that, Sam, there's a question: so what is that? Is that the soul? Is it divinity? Is it God? And my inclination is to say yes, all to all the above. That's it's we're and just about the semantics of what we're talking about here.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say quickly, because I know we need to end. I actually don't know. And neither do the neuroscientists, right? Who claim that consciousness is just an epiphenomenon of the neural firing of the brain, right? And I don't know. Maybe there is somebody who knows, but I don't know, right? It's a great mystery. How is it that we're conscious, right? But the way that the Hasidic tradition understands it is that the divinity, that divinity itself, pre-manifestation, is an ocean of pure consciousness and being, right? That is completely transcendent, beyond space and time. And like an ocean, right, that can empty a part of itself into a cave, but is never reduced by that pulsation of the water in and out, right? The ocean still remains full, right? That divine quality of that field of pure of consciousness, right, can flow into our own being, right, as this individual consciousness, right, which can then permeate all of the more manifest aspects of reality, thereby making God more manifest in the world. Okay, but again, I don't know what's absolutely true, but on an experiential level, right, consciousness has the kinds of features or qualities, right, that I'm describing, and I don't want you to take my word for it. Check it out for yourself. Turn the light around. There are many ways to do that. Many teachers who teach how to do that. I did that for a whole year in our text study on the Maggid of Mezrich, which you can subscribe to if you want to. I know some of the people on this call did that work with me, right? And see what's true for you.
Thank you, Sam. Just a point, I guess, to stamp that for those who are interested. I mean, I know there are a lot of people who are saying like we need a whole day on this. Sam, as he said, has written a lot about this. So if this, if you're finding this resonant with you, you may in fact want to consider diving into Sam's teachings. It's okay if I encourage people to contact you directly, Sam, to get yep. Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
And so may the light of awareness, that light of Shabbat, that you're in, help you set up your inner ohel. That was another thing that was like worth the price of admission. The teaching, the Aleph Hey Lamed. May the tent expand and let's all rest in that tent on this Shabbat. So Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Thanks, Adi. Thank you, Sam. Beautiful teaching. And most of all, thank you to all of you for being here and helping us hold up this tent together. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, everybody. Take good care.